Hi everyone, Kathy Rose here. I'm going to talk to you about the astrological patterns for March 2025. This is a very complicated and fabulous month. It's full of high activation for growth, but it's a mixture of many different energies and it's rather complex. So let me dive in and start talking to you about the themes so that we can look at all the layers that are happening in March. First of all, there's going to be a major theme of introducing a new dynamic, which is confidence in our own capability. We're going to have an opportunity to really look at within ourselves, do we believe in our own ability to successfully handle whatever happens in life? Do we have that innate confidence within? Start spending some time meditating on this. Do you believe in yourself? That's going to be a dynamic that comes forward because Mercury and Venus are beginning a retrograde in Aries, and that's starting to introduce what Saturn and Neptune, once they enter Aries, wants to bring about. The other thing that happens in March is the Aries point activation, and I've talked about this in prior videos, but I'll mention it again here. Aries point begins at 29 degrees of a mutable sign and goes all the way through 1 degree of a cardinal sign. So we have Aries point activation right now with the planet Neptune because it's 29 Pisces, but it's really going to get strong with Mercury and Venus hitting the early degrees of Aries, followed by Neptune at the very end of the month entering Aries. So this is high visibility potential, which means good behavior will sparkle. And not so good behavior will come forward and come into public view. So be very mindful. Even when no one is looking, make sure your motives are beautiful and you're operating from that high service mode and you're operating from integrity because even if nobody's looking at that moment, your energy is going to be sparkling. Imagine that you are standing in a spotlight. So, the other thing that's going to be happening in March is a lot of assertive energy flowing around and the need to move quickly, which can be a little bit of impatience. And so we get the opportunity to engage mindful patience, be very aware this month about how you react to assertive energy from other people. Be very aware of when you need to engage in assertive energy and when you need to breathe so that you are flowing with patience. So I'll develop this as we go through. So part of the complication of March is that we have two retrogrades. Mercury and Venus begin a retrograde in March at the same degree in the same sign. Well, almost the same degree in the same sign. And there are two eclipses, and one of the eclipses will happen at the degree that Mercury and Venus began the retrograde. This is making a profound statement about the fact that we need to make good choices this month, good choices in our own behavior, good choices with our own attitude. And so the picture on screen is one my husband shot when we were hiking in one of the parks here in Virginia Beach. And I loved this part of the park where one path split into two and took off in two different directions. And they had strategically placed a bench that had seating on both sides. So you could sit on one side and think about which direction you wanted to go. And that is very symbolic of what we get to do in the month of March on our body, mind, and spirit. Make good choices this month. So the Aries point activation, when I said you're going to be in a spotlight, well, here is the imagery that I use when I teach about the Aries point, but it's going to be so strong for 2025 and 2026. So remember your good intentions, your lovingness, your high motives, your service, your humility will be sparkling. And you want to step into that and say, great, I'm ready to receive that spotlight on my loving behavior. And likewise, whatever needs to be revealed is going to be revealed on the mundane level, perhaps through politics, in other areas of life. You cannot hide when the Aries point is activated. There is this dynamic pressure taking place to kind of push you into public view. So the Aries point relates to our connection with the world. That's why some astrologers call it the world point, um, because it is a portal for connection with the world. So the Aries point, an especially efficient conduit linking the inner workings of the individual horoscope or our own energy patterns with the external world. So the Aries point pushes it into high visibility public projection. Now, really take this seriously because, again, as I mentioned, you're going to be sparkling. Make good choices. How do you want to be seen? And, this is not only externally, but internally. And what I mean by that is on the outside, maybe you are all smiles and acting nice, but on the inside, if you're full of anger and frustration and bad thoughts and judgment, that's still going to be seen because the Aries point wants to bring things into public projection. So align your inner and outer worlds and live and saturate yourself with the frequency that you want. Um, the Aries point gets activated intensely this year with a new pattern emerging. We are beginning a new phase. March 30th, so at the very end of this month, Neptune enters Aries and hits that 0 cardinal mark. And then it's joined shortly after by Saturn. Saturn enters it in May, on May 24th. So what's fascinating about this year, and I've discussed this in other videos, is that we get Saturn, Neptune hitting the late degrees of Pisces, going into early Aries, and then going back into Pisces and not fully entering the sign Aries until 2026. So we have a back and forth energy in 2025 that says, make good choices because it changes. There's not a super strong sense of stability, astrologically speaking, in the month or in the year of 2025. Things are fluctuating back and forth dynamically. So let's develop and let's talk about the Venus and Mercury retrograde that's going to happen in March. And let's begin with Venus. The image on screen is a cactus that's blooming. One of my friends in Phoenix sent this to me a few years ago, and I think it's a great photo to illustrate Venus and Aries beginning a retrograde, particularly because it's beautiful with the flowers and they're pink, which kind of correlates to Venus, but it's part of a cactus, which is pointy and assertive. And here you get Venus in Aries, um, beautiful but yet assertive, beautiful but yet impetuous, and dynamic. So on March 1st, Venus begins the retrograde at 10 degrees Aries and will stay retrograde for about 40 days and will finally go direct in April on the 12th at 24 degrees Pisces. So Venus starts at 10 Aries, backs up to 24 Pisces, and then will flow back into Aries as you get to the second half of April and into May. It actually doesn't enter Aries again, I don't think, until May, if I'm correct. But the bottom line here, when we have a Venus retrograde, no matter what sign it's in, we get to review our values, we get to review our relationship patterns, we get to review our social connections, we get to review our own social patterns in general. We get to review where we have insecurities, socially speaking. And in this case, particularly because Mercury and Venus will be retrograde, we get to review our sense of security related to money and abundance. And I'm already sensing that with clients. I've had a very, very busy client schedule, and I have been already hearing a lot of clients who are feeling a lot of insecurity about money right now, and safety. Um, so it's being jiggled, it's being shaken up. It's in a sense, the energy feels a little turbulent out there. So during the retrograde Venus, spend extra time focusing on your connection with the universe and your innate capability to handle whatever life brings you. Spend a little extra time also asking yourself about the relationships in your life. Are there any relationships you've outgrown? Are there any relationships that don't serve you anymore? And pay extra attention as Venus goes retrograde to whether you need to carve out some time to work at your own speed. Now, I think this is a very important point about this Venus retrograde in Aries. Aries wants to go fast, it wants to be speedy, it wants to be independent. Venus in Aries doesn't necessarily want to cooperate or accommodate. It wants to march forward with a warrior intention. Please carve out some time for the next few months to make sure you are honoring the part of you that may just need to be independent and work at your own speed. Of course, we need to learn to cooperate in general. We do, but you can't bottle this up. It will become explosive. When Venus retrogrades back into Pisces, it's a little softer. It's not quite as intense. But while it's in Aries, and because it's beginning the retrograde in Aries, and Mercury follows, and there's an eclipse in Aries later in the month, it's going to be a prevailing thought to continue to ask yourself if you need that independent time to work at your own speed. So this is what I was talking about as far as manage your assertive energy and activate patience. Because if you feel a buildup of inner impatience, if people are really frustrating you because maybe you have to match their speed or cooperate, that's giving you signals. Take some time out, go do your own thing, manage it, be aware of it, be clear about it, and pay attention to the people around you in case they're giving you those signals that maybe they're not in a particularly cooperative mood. So pay attention to all this. This is very powerful energy, especially because Mercury is going to be joining in. So on March 3rd, Mercury enters the sign Aries, and then March 15th, it begins the retrograde at 9 degrees Aries. Remember, Venus started it at 10. So again, why is this happening? There's a statement here. There's a point the universe is trying to make. Now, Mercury doesn't stay retrograde as long as Venus. It stays retrograde for about 3 weeks. So Mercury will end the retrograde on April 7th, but it will have backed up into Pisces, and it goes direct at almost the same degree that Venus did. Venus at 24 Pisces, Mercury at 26. And again, we have another photo of a cactus blooming. Again, symbolically talking about all this Aries energy blooming with the Aries point dynamic. So the bottom line here, while Mercury and Venus are both retrograde, dot your I's, cross your T's, make sure your details are handled. Take extra time because this is speedy energy. This is impetuous, impulsive energy. Take an extra moment to breathe. Take an extra moment to make sure you haven't missed any important details. But at the same time, your courage, your inner capability is wanting to express. So be bold, be courageous. What an interesting time we have. And I'm going to develop this a little bit more when I talk about the eclipse that happens in Aries later in the month. But first, let's talk about the full moon lunar eclipse, which is happening on March 14th at 2:55 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So this chart is set for Washington, D.C. This is a total eclipse, which means it's very, very strong and powerful. And I do know that there will be some visibility in some parts of Europe and some parts of North America, but you would have to get up if you're in North America in the middle of the night, in the wee hours of the morning, in order to see it. So this is a full moon in Virgo. I mean, I'm so fascinated by this eclipse because we have Saturn, Sun, North Node, and Neptune all sitting there together in Pisces, and that's quite beautiful energy. It is flowing, it's intuitive, it's creative, it's abstract. Opposite the sign Virgo, Moon in Virgo, which is organized and efficient, very opposite energy, obviously, but still carries the vibe of service and humility. So there's something very, very spiritual about this lunar eclipse. But because Saturn is there, it's talking about practical spirituality. And it's Moon in Virgo, practical spirituality. Bring it into your daily life, bring it into your daily routine. But yet at the same time, we have Mercury and Venus conjunct in Aries. Venus is already retrograde, and Mercury will begin the retrograde the day after this eclipse. So we have this combination energy. And at the same time, Mars is in Cancer still. It's finally ended the retrograde, but it's still in the sign Cancer. And Mars in Cancer is directing energy into compassion and caring and nurturing, self-soothing kind of energy. So this eclipse, take time to merge your confidence, your warrior instincts to move energy forward with courage, and merge that with spiritual security, inner security, connecting with the divine. Develop a belief within that you will get information exactly when you need it, that you have that kind of connection with the universe, that whenever you need something, it will show up, that you are living in a friendly world. A lot of people right now are not feeling that. And it's uncomfortable when people believe the world is not friendly. As one of my abiding foundational beliefs, I energize the world as a friendly place. At least in my reality, I want to manifest the world as a friendly place, a supportive place with beautiful, loving people. So this is a potent lunar eclipse. If you stand outside under the beams of this full moon eclipse, receive it and let yourself be filled with that sensitivity that Pisces is trying to offer and the organizational structure that Virgo is trying to offer. I'll tell you one thing that mid-month would really, really benefit you is if you did a deep cleaning on your house, if you incorporated some of the feng shui practices of revitalizing your home or your office with sparkling life force energy. In my most recent Maverick podcast episode, I interviewed Agnes Belesne, a fabulous feng shui master who lives in Miami, Florida, and we talked about some of these principles. But certainly, this full moon in Virgo, you would benefit from moving your furniture around or doing a deep clean, because when you add more life force to your home or your surroundings, it fills your body, mind, and spirit. One thing leads to the next. And that's a great way to use this eclipse. So let's develop one other little concept here. And I talk about this frequently. The horoscope has a memory and the zodiac has a memory. When there is a strong activation of a particular degree because of planetary movement, then when that same degree and sign is hit later on, we continue that development that began at the first activation. So what I mean by this, in this month of March, as Mercury and Venus begin the retrograde at 9 and 10 degrees Aries. And then later in the month, we have an eclipse that is activating that same degree zone. That is making a mark, so to speak. It is beginning a process that will be later developed when Saturn hits those same degrees in 2026, and then continued in development when Neptune hits those degrees in 2029 and 2030. Now, this is how you can think about this personally. Number one, pay close attention in March about what is revealed through the Aries point activation for your own growth pattern. You know, what shows up? What do you need to polish? What do you need to develop? What new patterns are you wanting to begin? Try not to think of only events as in this happened to me or this event took place, but think of what did you initiate within? And then perhaps that does manifest on the outer level. But really try to write it down if you can at the end of March or as you're going through the month. Be thinking about new ideas or new habits or patterns that you begin. Be thinking about what you're wanting to release. Be thinking about new awarenesses, because in 2026, when Saturn hits this, it's going to go to the next level. In 29 and 30, when Neptune hits it, it will even flourish more. Now, on the mundane level, we can also look at what's happening in the world. What kind of events are happening in the world, or what kind of social awareness is happening starting in March with this very interesting retrograde energy and eclipse energy we have. And then how is that developed in 26? How is that developed in 29 through 30? It's fascinating to think this way. But what you do have control over is your own growth and development and your own decisions for this month. So certainly pay attention to that. And you know, in March, we have an equinox. On March 20th, it's the Aries equinox. In the Northern Hemisphere, this is when spring begins. And then in the Southern Hemisphere, this is when fall begins. And this is when day and night are equal. Hence the painting that is on screen. This was done by my dear friend Liza, and I did help a little bit with this one. But it illustrates day and night being equal and that sense of balance. So, you know, the March 20th time when the sun enters Aries, that's also the Aries point activation. It just continues to ping all month. This spotlight energy, this public projection energy. So step into it and be aware of it and embrace the new season that begins on March 20th. Now, we have the second eclipse of the month, March 29th, 6:58 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Again, this is set for Washington, D.C. And we have a solar eclipse at 9 degrees Aries. So you remember that's the degree that Mercury began the retrograde and Venus began the retrograde at 10. So we have this continued activation of that degree. Isn't that interesting? And when we have this solar eclipse, Mercury will be sitting right there at the Aries point, 0 degrees Aries. And we will still have those three planets in Pisces, Saturn, Neptune, and Venus. Venus is retrograde during this eclipse. So there is something very, very special and profound about this time frame. And again, I will say what I said in the beginning part of this video for the themes. Let the inner dynamic of knowing you are capable come forward right now. If you do nothing else during this new moon, take some time to know you are up to the task of creatively and successfully navigating through life. Fill yourself with that frequency and know the reason you can successfully navigate life is because you are connected to the universe. And again, this is the best way to use this combination of Aries and Pisces energy. Because I am connected with the universe, because I understand the creative principle of my thoughts and my energy patterns and my divine connection, I can come up with information that I need in any given moment. I can successfully navigate through life. Let that fill the cells in your body. Let that fill your spirit and your mind. Let it radiate out into the world. Begin this pattern because, again, it gets developed next year in 2026. It gets developed again in 29 through 30. So, this is a beautiful moment we all have. All right, my final thoughts for the month, this fascinating month of March. I think this photo I chose, which actually the person in the photo is my son-in-law. He was part of a photo shoot for a magazine. Um, it illustrates and it's very symbolic of the energy we have in that we can focus on tapping flow. We can focus on surrendering to the flow, moving with flow. But as you see in the picture, this isn't just flow as in drifting down the river. This isn't just sitting in the canoe doing nothing and letting the current take you wherever you want to go. This is actively paddling, putting forth the effort to say, I'm in the flow and I'm moving forward purposefully because I am paddling. So there's an active principle with the Aries dynamic, and then there's the flow and the surrender with the Pisces dynamic. And so I was meditating on this photo and I thought, my gosh, that's perfect for Aries, Pisces combined right now. And then my secondary thought that I try to live by, I have as again as a foundational belief. I am always in the right place at the right time. I say that frequently. I say that almost every day. I'm always in the right place at the right time, therefore I'm safe. Therefore, I am guided to where I need to be. And that helps me to surrender, but that also helps me be filled with confidence. So you can also meditate on that if you want. All right, there we go. There's March 2025 in a nutshell. Believe in yourself. Go forth and demonstrate your beautiful energy because you will be on display. You're going to be in a spotlight. Let yourself sparkle. Let yourself be seen. Decide how you want to be seen, and then just allow it to take place. All right. I wish you all good things for March. Many blessings and much love to you. And I look forward to seeing you for the April forecast video. Bye for now.